Let's bring the hearing let's open the hearing we're going to start with 1665. But before we do that, if you all stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, Representative Dolan.
Here.
Representative Piemonte.
Here.
The clerk's here. Representative Tripp.
Present.
Representative Guthrie. Here. Representative Lassalas.
Here.
Representative McBride. Representative Melvin.
Here.
Representative Ayer.
Here.
Representative Power.
Here.
Representative Trelevin. Representative Gilman.
Here.
Representative Majori.
Here.
Representative Stavis. Representative Magapudi. Representative Van.
Here.
Representative Klee.
Here.
Representative Gallagher.
Here.
And Representative Rung.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to have some substitutes today, and they're not really due to be here until we get into the exec sessions. They're going to be for Trelevin. She'll be replaced by Representative Long. Representative Manchapudi will be replaced by Representative Perez. And Representative Stavis will be replaced by Representative Telersky. On the other side of the aisle, Representative McBride will be replaced by Representative Nodder. Okay, HB 1665. You want to begin? Okay, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman Dolan, and good morning, members of the Municipal Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Judy Aaron. I represent Sullivan County District 7, representing the towns of Ackworth, Goshen, Langdon, Leominster, and Washington. I'm introducing this bill today and ask that you support HB 1665. This bill came about after the July 29th storm that hit our state and created millions of dollars in damage to towns in Cheshire and Sullivan County. Specifically, I'm here to talk about what happened in my own little town of Ackworth and how this bill would have helped us tremendously. Because of the July floods, my town suffered millions of dollars of road damage, bridge damage, and crop damage. Farmer fields were destroyed at the start of harvest season. Sap lines were damaged, and hay was left to rot in the fields. Because our roads were badly damaged, farmers were unable to empty their manure pits, and mail could not be delivered. Utility poles in danger of falling over could not be reached to repair them, and we could not get emergency vehicles through these roads either. There was only one way in and out of our town, and that road had been damaged as well. Ackworth had a total of 9 roads that were made totally impassable by this storm and left in a condition which made them look like an earthquake had struck. I've passed around some photos so you can see a sampling of what we endured. 7 of those were paved roads, an expensive investment for our little town of 850 people. 3.5 miles of Cranebrook Road, a major north-south paved road, of which the paving was completed only a few years earlier, was severely damaged, and the Cranebrook alongside the road became a huge water management and wetlands issue. Culvert failures caused massive damage to the area, and we feared more flooding would happen with future rainstorms. Clark's Sugar House was surrounded by debris washed down from the road, and in short, it was a natural disaster that caused extensive and expensive damage, which a small town like Ackworth would not be able to absorb. Decades of investment in our roads and bridges were demolished in one night, causing issues concerning safety, commerce, the environment, and quality of life. It was clear to people who had come to actually see the damage that we had millions of dollars and years of repair work facing our town. Initially, the estimates were around $10 to $15 million. They have since gone higher because of inflation and difficulty obtaining materials. The town had to get temporary work started immediately to make roads passable and safe. DES and Homeland Security Emergency Management did not come until September 8th, 2021 to assess damage, a full month and a half after the floods hit us. Meanwhile, state roads that were damaged around Vilas Pool and Alstead and other spots on Route 123A were being addressed by state crews. NHDOT was kind enough to loan us road barriers and signage to alert citizens to closed roads. I sent out emails with photos and videos of the damage and pleaded with our state leadership, including the Fiscal Committee and Executive Council, for financial help. And while I received much sympathy and concern from my colleagues and from the House and Senate finance leaders, I was surprised and shocked to find out that there was absolutely no statutory vehicle in our state statutes to have immediate financial help available to any municipality that suffered this kind of damage from a natural disaster. None. Currently, our state is flush with ARPA funding and a healthy surplus, yet Ackworth has not had any financial help from the state because there's no statutory vehicle to get it to us. We have since had a town meeting to authorize a $2.1 million loan from Municipal Bank, who was willing to work with us, but we still have to figure out how to pay it back. Our town has enormous financial challenges facing us. The only statute that touched on the possibility of state help was RSA 21P:37. The statute allowed money to be loaned to a municipality from the state treasury, but only after a presidential declaration of emergency was granted by the President of the United States. That declaration would also allow our state municipalities to file for FEMA funding later on. In the beginning, for us, that was months away. It was of zero immediate help to our town. We needed immediate financial help to pay for material and workers to make our roads temporarily sound until permanent fixes can be done with the help of the FEMA disaster programs. There was actually one other statute that could have been used, and that was RSA 9:13D regarding civil emergencies. And that would require the governor to act to provide funds in a civil emergency. He chose not to do that, despite letters and requests from my constituents. Our letters never even got the courtesy of a reply. The governor did send a letter to the president requesting an emergency declaration on September 27th, 2021, a full 2 months after the storm hit us. The disaster emergency declaration was granted 1 month later on October 28th, 2021. So it took 3 months for an emergency declaration to be declared. In that time period, Ackworth had to scramble to temporarily fix roads to make them safe and passable and figure out how to pay for it with its limited funds, especially as winter was on the horizon and we all knew the ground would start freezing by the end of October. It's January now. All of our roads are open and passable. We're just completing a damage inventory for FEMA. It is unlikely that we will see any FEMA money until late spring at best. Ackworth declared its own state of local emergency on Monday, August 9th, 2021, and the Ackworth Select Board voted to alert Department of Revenue that we would be overspending our budget and let them know we'd be taking $350,000 out of our fund balance, which at the time had $550,000 as a balance. That left us with a recommended minimum fund balance of $200,000. Ackworth had already spent $150,000 of that $350,000 on temporary road repairs for the Charlestown Road, Luther Hill Road intersection and Upper Dairy Hill Road culvert repair to make them passable. Those roads were of utmost importance so farmers could stop dumping their milk because milk trucks could not get through, as well as allowing feed trucks to come in with feed for dairy cows. It would also allow customers through to Elsesser's Blueberry Farm at the height of the picking season. It was also the roads necessary for the multi-million-dollar Bascom maple farms to get and send delivery trucks through. Making sure these commercial businesses could get back to work was crucial. Given we had already burned through $150,000 for one intersection, we were worried how far the remaining $200,000 would take us to do other needed temporary road repairs. The town also had to hire an engineer to assess damage and start working on damage inventory and materials inventory. It was not an easy or quick task to do. We had to find out how much material we'd need and time and labor involved for just the temporary fixes, and then get engineers and contractors to work with us later on the permanent fixes. We also had to scramble to obtain DES emergency permits. There were costs associated with obtaining all of this work. There were miles of roads to assess, and on some roads the damage was quite extensive. In my opinion, our own Homeland Security Emergency Management was ill-equipped to deal with the kind of damage in our town, and their assessment tools were antiquated. It was laughable that they sent out engineers with wheel measurers to try to assess every foot of damaged roadway when we had miles of it. This was clearly a task that would have taken years to accomplish and an idea that was quickly abandoned. So given all that and our experiences, it was my opinion that we had to have a statute such as this one that I'm presenting today, one which would provide gap funding to municipalities that have extensive damage and that has little resources and a small tax base to absorb the costs of such damage. The gap funding would allow towns to have some financial breathing room between the time the disaster strikes to when FEMA money becomes available. It would go a long way to helping a small town with little resources to begin to rebuild and make roads and other infrastructure safe for its citizens and businesses. Using our fund balance, some capital reserve money, and some money from our Municipal loan, to date, Ackworth has spent about $1,217,119 on flood and road repairs. And for 2022, we are budgeting $1,862,642 for flood repairs alone. Our municipal budget is usually around $1.3 million, but in 2021, we overspent because of the flood damage repairs. We're looking at a municipal tax mill rate increase from $7.81 to $9.27 per mill for our residents. But we're trying to cut out other areas of the 2022 budget to bring that increase down. This bipartisan bill seeks to set up a municipal disaster relief fund, a fund that would be funded in part by municipalities themselves through an annual payment from their town to the fund, which acts like a risk pool of sorts. Money would also be deposited into it by the state on an annual basis through the state budgeting process as well as through any infrastructure grants they can obtain from the federal government. It may be too late for Ackworth to benefit from such a fund, but it would have been a godsend had we had access to that kind of relief money. So I hope that you'll pass this bill out of your committee with an OTP recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding this bill or the damage that we sustained.
I'm going
Thanks.
to turn to the committee. Does the committee have any questions for Representative Aaron? Yes, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. My question pertains to page 1, line 15 of the bill. And specifically, I'm looking at the figure of 0.005%. That seems low to me, and almost as a result of that figure, there's almost no cost to municipalities to contribute to this risk management pool that provides the gap funding. So, for example, like in Brookline, the 0.005% of our budget of $6 million is a $300 annual contribution to this fund. So my question is that figure correct?
Well, I figured a 0.5% would be fine.
Follow up?
Follow up, go ahead.
I believe that there might be a a Scribner's error, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
And that it should be 0.5%
yeah.
or 0.005 factor, and strike the word percent.
Yeah, we were looking, I told the drafter that it should be 0.5%. So for example, for Ackworth, it would have been something like $5,000 as a contribution.
Yes, Representative Powell. Another
I had
follow-up?
one more thought. So are you clear that in the language of the bill, there's an error? I agree that 0.5% is more reasonable. But in here, just the way that it's stated in the language, I see an error.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for taking the question, Representative. Could you tell me, do you eventually get money, recovery money from FEMA or any other state? Like this is a gap bill to get you over the hump. But do you eventually get the relief from the federal government or state government when you have a disaster such as this?
Okay, so thank you for your question. So how this is going to work is that as we've got an inventory of projects that we're going to do, and as we start a project, work on this project, the town has to lay out that funding. And at the end of when the project is completed, say one stretch of roadway that gets repaired, you submit all the paperwork to FEMA, citing all the expenses for that road repair. And if FEMA approves, they have to approve all the parts of that submission. When they approve it, they pay you back 75% of that expense. And so the town would have to still be kicking in 25% of that, which there's another Senate bill being heard tomorrow that would have that be 12.5 by the town and 12.5 by the state, that the state would share that 25%. So, but to your question, the town will get 75% of whatever FEMA approves. And then, you know, they're still responsible for the 25%, which when we're looking at the millions of dollars worth of damage to our town, 25% is still a ginormous amount of money for our town to be able to absorb.
I thank you for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gallagher.
So I remember previous floods in the state. In 2005, there was one in Allstead, and then in 2006, there were some in the Merrimack River in general. I was wondering if you could compare and contrast the 2021 floods in Ackworth with those, as well as how the recovery efforts for them compared. If we didn't have this fund in 2005 or 2006 either, then how did we recover from those?
Thank you for your question, Representative Gallagher. Very good question. I was trying to find that out myself. But from what I understand, most of the damage that was done, that happened back in that time, were state roads. And the state certainly had the money to do the work and recover a lot of the stretch of road on Route 123 and 123A were the places where roadway was extremely damaged. And that was a result of, from Lake Warren, there was a breach that happened in some of their culverts up there. So we had this wall of water that just came down the state roadways and damaged them. In this flood that happened July 29th in our town of Ackworth, we had most of the roads that were damaged were, and the damage that the town is now responsible for, were all municipal roads. So that's kind of why there was really no need for the towns back then, that I understand, to have sought help from the state in this manner.
Thank you. Representative Lascelles?
Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I think it's certainly a duty of government to make available this sort of disaster relief. So I am definitely in favor generally of this. This is kind of a nitpick, but on page 1, line 25, you say, if the amount of the total damage is greater than the municipality's annual municipal budget. Now, do you mean the annual budget for road repairs or their entire budget?
I was looking at the entire municipal budget. In our town of Ackworth, the municipal budget usually runs around $1.3 million. The amount of damage that we had sustained in our town was well over $10, $15 million. And so it's very clear that a small town like ours would not be able to absorb this kind of damage. We had money put away certainly in our road and bridge funds. We had money in our capital reserve fund. Certainly none of it even touched the amount of money that we would need to cover the damages.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but if the damage was a significant amount, but it did not equal, let's say it came up to 75% of the municipal budget, then based upon how this is written, unless I'm reading it wrong, that you wouldn't be able to draw from this. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So I just think that greater than the municipality's annual municipal budget is kind of limiting in a way that would be very difficult to get any good out of this.
Well, I was also trying to take into, factor in, I wanted to put some thresholds on this, certainly. And certainly to help specifically those communities that are really, don't have the tax base to pay for this, to absorb this kind of damage. If the committee feels that the thresholds that I've placed on this bill are a little, too high or too extreme, I invite you to make it a little bit more, if you feel it should be more reasonable, so to speak. But I feel that, it's the larger communities, the Nashuas, the Manchesters, certainly have the kind of budget that they could fix their municipal roads that are damaged like that. Whereas the smaller rural towns really are the ones that need the help. And I recognize too that at some point, when there's FEMA money coming, that's going to cover 75% of that kind of damage, depending on what they approve to pay for. So that's why I kind of laid it out that way. But if, like I said, if the committee feels that some of these thresholds should be eased a little bit, I'd be happy for that too.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for bringing this forward, and I do understand that for small towns it must be difficult. I'm out in Nashua, so I'm much, as you pointed out, we have larger budgets. But my questions to you are, it references here that it says municipalities wishing to draw from the fund in the future shall pay into the fund. I'm sorry, this is page 1, line 14. So I take from that not all municipalities, it's enabling, they don't have to join it and so on. But if they do, how would they opt in, and is there a must be in the fund for X number of years before they can draw out?
I haven't stipulated any details for how, that there's a time limit for you to be in the fund. I thought that that's some details, perhaps, that Homeland Security and Emergency Management or Department of Safety would work out in rules. I made it so that they would be the ones administering the fund. But certainly my intention is for, yes, it to be enabling in legislation, that if a town wants to join in on this, that they can. Because, for instance, it's in my mind, so Ackworth would pay $5,000 a year into this fund, or any other small town, what a percentage of their municipal budget. Because if they were to establish a fund on their own and put $5,000, for example, away every year, it would take them decades to even come up with, a substantial amount of money. Whereas if this is a pooled kind of risk pool, and the state is also contributing funds to it, that there is going to be a more substantial pool to draw funds from. And that's kind of how my thought was for this.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
There are.
Could I do it?
If I could ask you to hold your questions, I know we have a representative that's going to need to leave the hearing for another commitment, so we'll come back to Representative Aaron with your questions. Representative Edwards, would you like to join Representative Aaron at the table? And there are, for all of you testifying, there are wipes on the table, so if you want to wipe the microphone down, it's your choice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative Jess Edwards, representing Auburn, Chester, and Sandown. I do have another committee meeting at 9:30, so I appreciate your indulgence to let me speak now. I am not a subject matter expert on this topic. I have talked a great deal about the disaster out in Representative Aaron's district, and I'm familiar with what happened to my hometown where I grew up. The Missouri River overflowed, totally took out an amazing park where I had a lot of fun as a teenager, and it took absolutely years and years to get the federal disaster relief money, and so that sort of opened my eyes to how much pain the slowness of the process can cause a local town. And as I was thinking about Representative Aaron's issues, what if a bridge had been taken out that kept a population cluster from being able to get to the local emergency room? The issue there is speed. You gotta fix some stuff fast, and if you don't have the money, no money, no mission, they like to say. So I support the creation of this revolving fund. I'm a little leery about the emphasis on temporary construction versus allowing it to go ahead and be permanent, because in my experience, sometimes it costs 60% to do a temporary job when it would only cost 100% to do the permanent job, and so it's penny wise, pound foolish sometimes, I think, to just do temporary fixes. But I think that's something the committee could think about. This is such an obvious idea, I don't understand why it hasn't been done. I mean, we're obviously brilliant, but there have been brilliant people in the State House before us, and I don't understand why there isn't already a revolving fund, because this is sort of a blinding flash of the obvious that this kind of thing is needed. So why isn't there? And so it makes me wonder, if the federal rules get in the way of replenishing a revolving fund, is that part of the issue? And I'm just curious, I just cited Nebraska, but Nebraska doesn't have an account like this. So I just wonder if there are other states where there's a precedent for this. If there are no other states, then maybe there is an issue with the federal rules. And then it wasn't clear to me as I looked at it, and I should have provided this input to the sponsor earlier, but I don't understand what happens if the fund wants to exceed $30 million. You know, what if they're, you know, we're flush with cash and the towns keep wanting to pay in? What happens to the $31st million? I don't know. So, so I really hope the committee, with all your expertise, figures, you know, the smart way to do this, because the need is there. So I'll take questions if there are any for me.
Seeing no questions, I had a question or comment from Representative Aaron's. It was my intention, if
So may I
possible.
be excused?
Yes, please.
All right.
I had a thought that this is an early bill, so I had a thought that we might exec this bill this morning instead of just hearing it. But with the issues that have brought up so far about the finance number, would it be, I can postpone the exec portion of this to give you an opportunity to make an amendment to incorporate that change. Is that a reasonable thing to do?
That would be fine. I know, I mean, even if you want to exec it, and then I could draw up an amendment so that it can go, the amendment can go to the Finance Committee. But I also had a suggestion from Senator Gaida that he wanted to, because, you know, he's expecting it to come to the Senate as well, and he said that he would like to see the effective date be taking effect upon, you know, passage. And also that he believes that the, let me see, he gave me another suggestion on, he believed that it should be 50% of the municipal budget instead of on line 24, page 1, that the municipality may only draw from the Municipal Road and Bridge Disaster Relief Fund if the amount of the total damage is 50% of the municipality's annual municipal budget. So he wanted to lower that threshold as well. So I'd be happy to draft an amendment, you know, to this bill. If you want to wait for me to do that and then exec it, that's fine. If you want to exec the bill the way it is and then have me submit changes to finance, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay. Yes, Representative Rung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I share your concern about, on page 1, line 24, about having it exceed the town's municipal budget. But I would actually be curious about your ideas about striking from line 22 through line 27, because it doesn't seem as though just drawing once a year is relevant. If you have a major flood, major damage, and then 8 months later you have it again, but then you can't fix those roads a second time because you've already drawn from the fund, it seems as though it should just continue to cover any natural disaster damage, regardless of if it happens in the same year or not. That was Roman numeral 3. And then getting to your point too, you know, fixing, let's say, a 2-mile stretch of road for a very small town like yours will have a much bigger impact on your access to that money. Well, actually, it would probably have a bigger impact on a town with a larger budget because they have to exceed the threshold of their total municipal budget. So I agree. I don't even know if that line is necessary. And then one other thing, if you can indulge me, Mr. Chair, is it's not in this bill, but one of my concerns reading it is that if a town doesn't do proper maintenance on their roads, they may be more susceptible to damage from a natural disaster. Would that be a consideration in approving their funds?
I hadn't really thought of that. You know, that's a good point. Certainly, a small town is going to struggle to keep their roads maintained to begin with. I mean, in Ackworth, we have 66 miles of road in our small town. And certainly, the tax base is not robust enough to maintain all of those roads properly. We've struggled with that and have, a significant amount of our budget every year does go to road maintenance. I would venture to say probably a good 65 to 70% of our town municipal budget is roads. And we try best we can to maintain them all. Some of them we feel that, well, let's just leave them gravel or dirt roads rather than paving them, because paving them, you have to maintain with, top coats and make sure that the culverts are cleared and all these other activities. As municipal people, you should certainly be aware of that. So, I don't know if we can or should put that kind of caveat in there, that based on your road maintenance program or whether your roads are being maintained properly. Certainly that could be a contributory issue when there's a disaster or storms or floods. One of the other problems that we had when Cranebrook Road was totally destroyed, a 3.5-mile stretch of road, was that a beaver dam broke. A couple of beaver dams broke from one of the beaver bogs up there. And that contributed to the volume of water that was coming down that roadway. So, do we also include in here, your local water management? I mean, there's a lot of things that contribute to why these floods cause these kinds of damage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? Representative Guthrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for taking the question. It seems that from the comments that some members of the committee feel that this is restrictive, and making it more difficult for you to get that gap money. When you're looking at the amendment, if you put in an amendment, would you look on page 2, the first 8 pages? I wonder how quickly you could get the funds that you need for the roads if in fact this passes, with the amount of effort you have to put in before you can get any money, particularly the engineering. I don't know how long that takes. Does this, my question, I guess, is to you is that area from page 1 to 9, which really puts what you have to do before you get any funds, do you feel that that is more restrictive than you want it, and would you look at that when you make the amendment?
Thank you for your question. And to your point, when we had all this damage happen, we quickly got a town engineer involved to go down, assess the damage, see where we needed to get work done quickly. So I thought that, it would be a natural occurrence of events of these items to be able to be presented fairly quickly anyway, because you're going to have an engineer take a look at the roads, or even your road crew. And by the way, in the town of Ackworth, we had exactly 4 people employed in our road crew. It was the supervisor, the road agent, and I don't know if it was 2 or 3 people who was working with him. So obviously we had, a very small crew involved in trying to get all these roads, see which roads were out, which roads needed priority, to see which roads needed to be put back together as best they could for emergency vehicle purposes and so forth. So we had, an assessment report that was prepared by our road engineer, outlining what the temporary repairs were going to be, which roads needed work quickly. That was almost done, within a week or two.
Okay.
And then to send a letter to the Commissioner of the Department of Safety and Director of Division of Homeland Security requesting the amount needed to, that you could be able to tell them, we need $500,000 right now to fix this. And a demonstration that the roads or bridges due to natural damage were of critical importance. Obviously, if you have roads that are not passable and you have to have emergency vehicles to get through them, that's going to be, you'd be able to demonstrate that pretty quickly. So, I think that the funds would be able to be dispersed to a town fairly quickly once they know what the damage is that they're dealing with.
Thank you very much for your, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Power?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I have a concern with regard to a term on page 2, line 1, and that is the reference to a certified road engineer. So within civil engineering, road engineers and bridge engineers are different areas of specialty. So my concern is that's very specific, road engineer. And in the line 2, it also goes on to say that this certified road engineer will be assessing damage to roads and bridges. So my question is, do you agree that perhaps it might be better to cite a professional engineer? Because that would imply a professionally licensed civil engineer, and that would be more comprehensive in terms of assessing roads and bridges.
Sure, that's a very good suggestion. Thank you so much.
More questions? Yes, Representative Klee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question goes on to what I had originally spoke about the how municipalities would opt in. I do have a concern. While I think this is a great fund, I think it really is a good idea. My concern is that can municipalities be able to opt in and opt out? And I guess it's kind of like we only want insurance when we get to a point where we're going to need insurance. Would it be better to, and I say this in reading the last page where it says that the New Hampshire Municipality Association indicates that if every municipality in the state did it, it would be $8 million in annual revenue. But would it not be better to almost say that municipalities with a budget, an annual budget less than X amount of dollars, because we know that they would have a hard time kind of compelling those, not making it so much enabling. I guess I'm just concerned that municipalities are going to come in and out of this fund as they feel that their budget would warrant it.
Thank you for your question, and that's a good point. I kind of thought of this in the same way as we have our, we have a, what's it called? For the road, it's a road mutual aid association throughout from the DOT. They have, I forget the name of it, but it's a fund that, it's not a fund, but it is, if you need signage or barriers or some sort of thing, it's a mutual aid that you can go, you have to join it. It's sort of like, I think, $50 a year that they charge municipalities to be a part of this mutual aid association. And when we found out that, we needed road signage and that kind of thing, and that could not be given to us by Department of Transportation for whatever reason. They were busy off doing all their repairs too. But this mutual aid association is available if you pay into it. Now they will allow you to pay into it even after the damage happened last week, so that you can access the list of names and so forth of contacts to other towns who could help you out if you needed sand or signage or something. And so that's what I was kind of thinking when I put that wording in here. But certainly with the rulemaking that Homeland Security Emergency Management could come up with this, you know, we could probably make some tweaks to that.
Thank you very much.
I mean, yeah, I absolutely understand that, you know, you don't want to buy insurance just when you need it. You have to have that in place.
Thank you.
Okay, one last question, Representative Tripp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. I have a question about the page 2, line 16, where you're going to be adopting interim rules. There's no mention of when final rules would be required. I think interim rules are fine, but you probably don't want to live 30 years with interim rules.
Right.
So if you're making an amendment, I would suggest, oh, this is not a question, is it? Would you agree that probably requiring final rules is a good idea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more people to testify, but just so I don't lose track here, Representative Aaron's, I've made notes that this might need 4 amendments.
Okay.
The dollar amount, the effective date, the language about engineers, and also about rules. So those are the 4 so far that I have. And with that many changes, I'm reluctant to pass it with those defects in it, hoping someone else will make this change. So what I would be looking for is, could you put an amendment in to capture those 4 things and have it back to us by Friday?
Oh, absolutely. You know, barring any kind of problem with the workload in drafting, but certainly I will put something together today and send it back to them.
Okay, I'd like to get I see your hand, Representative Powell, but I'd like to get a couple more people up in front of the microphone as we're getting out of time. If you could hold that and maybe wrap it into a question for the next person to come up, unless it's something real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is real quick. With regard to your list for the possible amendment, did you forget a correction of that percentage? Because
That's why I put dollar amount.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move forward and ask Representative Weiler to take the microphone. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very
Aaron.
much, and I appreciate all your time and looking at this and helping me refine this to be a better bill. I mean, this was really totally new territory for me, but I just know that our towns, our small towns especially, in a disaster such as this, really and truly do need assistance from the state when something like this happens. So thank you very, very much for your attention on it.
Thank you, Representative Aaron. The floor is yours, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Representative Ken Weiler, Rockingham 13, the towns of Hampstead and Kingston. It's difficult to plan for disasters. Past experience has shown that very few of them happened as expected. The disruption of the infrastructure caused by disasters has had too many delays. Many of the delays deal with who can begin mitigation and how will that entity be paid. By establishing a fund that can be used immediately to begin restoration efforts, we can hope to improve response times and minimize disruptions. I believe the funds are available to begin funding this proposal, and the municipal contributions envisioned will maintain it for the long run. If we do not begin mitigation immediately, the damage is sure to become worse than when it first discovered. Homeland Security and Emergency Management would be the obvious place for this fund to be managed and the place for the most expertise to be found. I hope that you will support the bill. Thank you. I also noticed when I was going over it last night that 0.005%, and also the talk of municipal budget. my town has a municipal budget, total budget of like, say, 20 million. 15 million of it goes to the schools. 4 or 5, 6 million goes to run the town, and another million goes to the county. So which piece are we putting this stipend on? Are we putting it on the 20 million or the 5 million that's really, in fact, the municipal budget? So I don't know if we need tweaking to say what a municipal budget is. And even then, .005, if it was .005 times the budget, it's like $5,000 for every million.
I believe we've recognized the fact
Yeah,
that there's
okay.
a decimal point error probably in there.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at it again if it gets to finance, just to figure out how much money would, and I see that Municipal Association thinks $8 million a year would come in, and I can probably believe it, depending on what part of the budget you're really multiplying this figure by, and whether you're using .005 times the budget of .005%, which is 100 times less. So anyway, there's those few things that I'm happy that the committee found right away. And, you know, I've been doing this for 30-plus years, and I've seen about every 10 or 15 years there's a disaster. And it's always never repeated the same way. And sometimes it's a river, sometimes it's just overall flooding, but it's never the same event, and it's always unexpected. So, yes, we need to be better prepared for this. Thank you.
Would you be willing to take any questions from the
I
committee?
would be happy to.
Anyone have a question for Representative Wheeler? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to hear from Representative Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Walt Stapleton, Claremont, Ward 3, Sullivan County, District 5. I am in support of 1665, and I was going to speak more in general terms, but I'm going to forego general remarks for the interest of time. But it occurred to me that there might be a possibility, instead of 0.5%, maybe an indexed scale. And I say that because in Claremont, we don't have the water courses resources like Ackworth or Plainfield or other towns. And our budget is much more than the 1 million that was cited for Ackworth. So, you know, when you have a budget of 10 or 20 million dollars for a larger municipality, now you're beginning to impact the budget for that particular item. And, you know, like buying insurance, because in a way it is kind of an insurance, as an option to have help in the case of an emergency, perhaps an indexed or scaled percentage relative to municipal budgets, and maybe even the geological nature of the town. If you have no water courses except a swamp or two, your need for the disaster relief will be much less than several streams, brooks, and so forth running through towns. So that would be my recommendation, as long as there's going to be an amendment made, maybe consider that as an option. The impacts are going to continue for flash floods and heavy rains, almost tropical rains. In Claremont, we had some washouts. We have a large enough budget. We have a large enough resource of DPW to handle these things, and the budget will handle supplement by contractors. But we have noticed that there's been a change. Wider culverts, better ditching, a larger riprap, because we're going to have more of this. And we believe that our surrounding communities, the smaller towns, need this kind of assistance because they don't have the wherewithal and the resources of the larger municipality. So I'm going to end with that and ask you to support 1665, especially if it comes forward with an amendment.
Would you be willing to take questions from the committee, Representative?
Yes.
Anybody have questions for Representative Stapleton? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And last on my list of pink cards here is testimony from Natch Grayus, the Municipal Association.
Thank you, Nate Graves for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. We support this bill. The way we read it is it's an opt-in provision. I know that was a question that came up earlier. And I guess the only thing I would add, not to be repetitive, but I believe the committee's pretty much identified this, is the bill as written is really designed for smaller municipalities to have access to funds when they have a major natural disaster go through their area. And as the committee identified, you know, if we adjust the line 25 for the total damage amount, maybe to be something like the municipality's annual road budget, or if it's some other calculation, that may attract more municipalities to choose to participate in the fund. The only other thing that I would add is that from our reading, essentially over time, the state would contribute $30 million to this fund. It would, that's the cap on the state funding at this point in time, and then municipalities would annually contribute. So assuming no natural disasters happen, the fund would continue to accumulate monies, and there's no cap on that. It would just continue to accumulate monies, and then as natural disasters occurred, it would pay out for that, which would be the reduction in the fund. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are you willing to accept questions from the committee?
Yes.
Are there any questions for the NHMA? Yes, Representative Klee.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. It kind of relates back to what I had said before, and I think you touched on it when you said that those smaller towns and so on. So would it not be better to look at towns that have a budget of whether an annual municipal budget of less than X amount of millions or whatever it would be? Because they would be the ones that would be benefiting more for it than.
I can't choose among towns. I represent all of them. So that's a policy decision for the committee.
Thank you so much.
Representative Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. My question pertains to the fiscal note, where it says that there would be a need for a part-time planner with an annual salary of $30,000 in order to administer the program. So my question is, where in this bill and or how would this position be authorized, and how would it, from what department would support this salary?
I would defer to the Department of Safety for that. I don't know what their requirements are.
Okay, at this point, Representative Aaron, what we're going to do is, I was inclined to exec this bill this morning, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait for the various amendments that were spoken of and look to try to get those by the end of the week. And when I get them, then I'll put this in the list to be exec'd as soon as possible. Okay, that concludes the hearing on HB 1665. And for those of you expecting an executive session on that bill today, we're not going to have it. We're not ready. That's the ranking member. Did you want to have a short conversation? Could we, Mr. Chair? Sure. Okay, I'm going to take a recess for 5 minutes.
just gotta get the, people. Yeah, do another attendance.
Okay, so,
We'll get new people.
yeah.
And,
So we get, over there, one, we got Dean here.
we should have,
This one over there, Maria Perez, continue.
I don't know.
Huh?
Go for you. He's right, where is he?
That's for long. That's for long. 11, 10.
Where's that? Kathy Long?
Huh?
Kathy Long? Long, who is she? That one?
Hi. Oh, you, was that okay, John?
Yeah.
All right. They should be up there.
It's only for one bill, there are for 1665.
Let's see, the second, no. No. Yes. She wants copies. Yeah. You know what you do, you could see, could you go see Heather in there? Huh? Or no?
No, she won't have them.
You won't?
Well, she won't have time to get them, because she'll have to go upstairs.
Yes, sir. I don't have copies. Okay, good. All right. So, it's in your bag. Good. Yeah, you can ask Tom when he gets back, but, John says she doesn't think he can get him now. Okay.
I'm just saying. All right. Yep. Yeah, it is. All right, so. Holy smokes, you got a big book now.
You want?
Oh, that's your book.
Yeah.
This, Perez came in. Perez came in for cheap.
Who is she?
She said right there. She didn't have any of these. You know, she wanted to get a copy of them.
Can Heather take care of that?
No. John said she can't. It's too late now. Tom's always last.
Oh, but you're second to last? No. Are you in order? You're after?
Yeah, some of these may have flipped a little bit. Let me make sure we're with you. 1029, that's a yes.
Yes, right.
1046,
Thank you.
ITO. 1112.
Thank you.
Okay, so, but I'm gonna let Julie make the motion to OTP, to amend it and OPT as
Yeah,
amended,
yeah.
and then let it fail.
Yeah, okay. So this one's gonna be an amendment?
Yeah,
That's 1112?
yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that one. Okay,
Um,
then you got,
Yes, Representative Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this opening a discussion?
Yes,
Only, just discussion.
right. It was in Gallagher, go ahead.
I think it seems like a pretty simple fix, so let's pass it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with Representative Gallagher. In my understanding is this is a housekeeping bill due to the fact that it was signed by the governor on May 17th, 2021. And it just fixes language that was an oversight and it enables that the city council shall also have the power to remove, as they have the power to remove any police commissioner, as they, in the bill that was signed, they were given the power to appoint police commissioners.
okay, any other comments or questions about HB 1029? And we're soon going to take a vote on this, so think about it if you're okay the way it is, or you want to make changes. Okay. Are we looking for a motion to OTP 1029? Yes, Representative Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion ought to pass on House Bill 1029.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I will second that motion.
okay. We have a couple of seconds, so, Mr. Secretary, you pick one. All right, the motion's been made and been seconded. Is there any last discussion on this? Okay, Mr. Secretary, would you take a roll, please?
Okay, roll call vote on HB 1029 ought to pass. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative LaSalle?
Aye.
Representative Nada?
Yes.
Representative Melvin? Representative Ayer? Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Long? Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Telesky? Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van? Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
And Representative Run.
Yes.
You got one more.
Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
Thank you. 19 to 0. Will this go on the consent calendar? Consent calendar?
Unless there are any objections, I'm going to move this bill into the consent calendar. Okay. Okay, that concludes our business on HB 1029. Next, we're going to look at HB 1046. Do I have a motion on that bill?
Mr. Chair, I move ought to pass on House Bill 1046.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion's been made to ITL, and the motion's been seconded. I'm sorry, did you say OTP?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the motion's been made to OTP, and it's been seconded. This is on HB 1046.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
correct me if I'm wrong, but House Bill 1046, there's another bill that we are going to pick up that is more general and could replace 1046.
You're
If I'm,
talking about 1397?
yes,
Noted.
okay, that's just my opinion.
Any other comments? Yes.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. And I was curious, rather than to, I was curious based on what we might receive as a motion or as an amendment to an additional bill, about whether or not we should act on this as it is, because without that amendment, I think this bill would have been important to move forward on, or could have been significant to move forward on. If the full committee feels that that is inappropriate, we can take action and then additional action after that. So, but I felt as it is, and without any additional amendments to any other bills, that the motion should be ought to pass.
All right, let me make a suggestion. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it. I would suggest that we move forward with this exec session on this bill number, and pass it or ITL it. And then when we consider 1397, based on how that vote turns out, we can come back and we can reconsider 1046 if that's appropriate.
Fine with me.
Okay.
I serve at the pleasure of the chair.
Is that confusing to anybody? Okay. So the motion is to OTP 1046 as presented. And Mr. Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Okay, Representative Piemonte?
No.
Clerk votes no. Representative Tripp?
I vote no.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lascelles?
No.
Representative Notter?
No.
Representative Melvin?
No.
Representative Villa? No. Representative Power?
No.
Representative Majori?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Representative Long? Yes. Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Teleski?
Yes.
Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van? Yes. Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
Representative Run?
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan.
No.
Motion fails 10 to 9.
Okay, that motion fails. Is there another motion to be made?
I move ITL.
Is that you, Rich?
Yes, it is.
A motion's been made to ITL. Is there a second? Representative Melvin, second. All right, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Yes.
I didn't get to speak to the OTP motion, but I would like to say that I think it's been the tradition in New Hampshire and the US that we elect, the people that elect are the constituents of who they're electing. As in Sullivan County, there are going to be people voting for a commissioner that's not going to represent them. That's all I want to say. I think people should vote for someone that's going to represent them, not for someone who's going to represent somebody else.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, would you take a roll, please? Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. There was more comments? No? Okay, take a roll, please.
Okay, ITL on House Bill 1046. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Notter? Representative Melvin? Representative Villa? Representative Power? And Representative Majori?
Yes. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry, Representative. My vote is no.
No,
on that,
okay, let
no.
me switch over here then. Representative Long? Representative Gilman?
Oh, there she
She's
is.
there.
You're here. Representative Telesky?
No.
Representative Perez? Representative Van? Representative Klee? Representative Klee? No?
For the record, Representative Clee voted no.
No? Okay. Okay. Representative Gallagher?
No.
Representative Rung?
No.
And Chairman Dolan?
Yes.
Motion passes 10 to 9 for the ITL.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just procedurally then, we put the first bill on the consent calendar. This bill, as it stands right now, would probably need a committee report. Is it fair to say we should wait until we do 1397 before we assign a committee report in favor or against?
No, I think it's, you have a good point. I think we should assign a committee report now. So, the motion was OTP? ITL. And, we have, Representative, Tripp, are you gonna make the? I can do it. Do the write-up? Diane, Power, Representative Power, you're gonna, well, you don't have to do anything. I'm sorry. Okay, make sure I'm in the right spot here. All right, that, for the time being, closes our business on HB 1046. The next bill we're going to consider is HB 1112, which is relative to competitive bidding in counties. Is there a motion to be offered?
I move ITL.
And a second? Representative Power, second. Discussion.
Wait, sorry, I didn't quite catch, what was the motion again? Could someone making the ITL motion speak to why they're proposing that?
Sure. Representative Tripp?
This is one of those things where my notes on this bill are right off to the beginning is, I wrote down, is there a problem? And nothing in the testimony that was heard convinced me there was a problem. This is one of those things where it attempts to create a process where it would be replacing processes that already exist in the counties. So this is why I determined it's not ready to legislate.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes, the thing that struck me on this bill is that if you require a competitive bidding process, municipalities that are very small do not have the staff to actually conduct this. So it would be a major burden for a small municipality to accomplish this. So from my standpoint, that really struck me, and I agree with the ITL motion.
Representative Gilman, we moved pretty quickly through this motion, and I understand that you had a different motion that you were going to make if you had the opportunity. Out of courtesy to you, I'll give you some time to explain what your motion would have been and how you would have liked to see the committee vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very nice of you. My motion would have been ought to pass, and as I said in testimony, this is really a house cleaning bill. Right now, under counties and counties 12:A, counties competitive bidding, there are two separate RSAs for Hillsborough, I think, or Merrimack, and Rockingham County. This language is taken directly from one of those subsections. And so why do we have two subsections that say the exact same thing, and then Rockingham has the exact same amount? I think that with competitive bidding, it can be done even in small towns, because there are forms you can, take off from any other town, such as the ones that have this already. And it's, why do we have to make these carve-outs for separate counties when there's opportunities of advertising that are free? NHMA does it, other county groups do it, and then there are even larger ones. I don't see the problem with the number of personnel it takes to write an RFP.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I support this bill, and I'm against the ITL for the reasons that Representative Gilman stated, but also it gives taxpayers the confidence of knowing that purchases above $5,000 are going to be handled consistently and responsibly. To Representative LaSalle's point, I read this, it applies to counties, not small towns. So, thank you.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My thought on this, similar to what I have heard here, but then to the comment about what problem is it aiming to fix. And what we saw is that piecemeal approach to different counties in the state. And my hope with this bill and why I would support it would be to get to some consistency, treat like things alike, even though I respect the fact that each of the counties is different, but a process should be consistent, so that there is some expectation going in that you have that consistency and you don't have to look in different places for different rules. So I'm opposed to the ITL and would support a different motion should we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Majuri. Any other comments? Yes, Representative Gallagher.
Yes, I oppose the motion to ITL because I remember ITLing a similar bill last year that would have been just for Carroll County, and I believe we did so on the grounds that we thought it ought to be for all counties. So now that we have a bill to do so for all counties, we ought to remain consistent with our previous reasoning and use that here to pass this one.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to take a roll on HB 1112.
Okay, the motion is to ITL HB 1112. Representative Piemonte,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp,
I vote yes.
Representative Guthrie. Representative LaSalles,
Yes.
Representative Nada,
Yes.
Representative Melvin. Representative Villa. Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Majori,
No.
Representative Long. No. Representative Gilman,
No.
Representative Telesky. No. Representative Perez,
No.
Representative Van. No. Representative Klee,
No.
Representative Gallagher,
For the record, Representative Gallagher says no.
And Representative Rung,
No.
and Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
Motion passes 10 to 9.
Okay, so on that bill, Representative Representative Tripp, you're going to write the,
Yes, I will. I also have an observation to share. It appears that if too many of the microphones are on, then you can't turn additional microphones on. Instead of going red, they blink green. So I would ask that if you're not speaking, that you turn your microphone off.
thank you for that observation. And do we, Representative Powell, were you going to write some comments on this, or just Representative Tripp?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe it was Representative Tripp that was going to do that.
And I asked
But
the
if Representative Power is volunteering, I'll let her do it. No, I'll do it.
Representative Majority, do you have someone to write the minority?
I believe Representative Gilman is going to write that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And that concludes our business on HB 1112. Next is HB 1275, relative to municipal representation on regional planning commissions. Do I have a motion on Representative? Yes, Representative Tripp.
I move ITL on House Bill 1275.
Is there a second? Representative Lascelles seconds.
I second the motion for ITL.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Yes, Representative Lascelles.
I represent the town of Litchfield, and this would be detrimental if I was to vote OTP on this. I would not be representing my constituents.
Representative Gallagher, you had a comment?
I support this bill and thus oppose the motion to ITL it because I think that representation should be based on population, that more people should mean more representation. So thus I support this bill and oppose the motion to ITL it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Representative.
I support the ITL for the same reasons Representative Lascelles does. It dilutes the vote of communities such as Merrimack and the National Regional Planning Commission. Also, as I stated asked during the public hearing, I'm not convinced that decisions made by larger cities won't have an effect on smaller towns, and I think they need to have a stronger voice in making those decisions. Thank you.
Representative Power?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support the motion inexpedient to legislate simply due to the fact that this bill as written increases the influence of large towns and municipalities at the expense of smaller ones.
Yes, Representative.
Yeah, I support that motion to ITL for the same reason. I represent a small town, and I believe if I support this bill, I going against my constituents.
Thank you. Representative Klee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am going to support the ITL, even though I'm from a larger municipality. And that was based on speaking with our city planner and so on, and he felt that our particular district and so on was represented well enough, and that it would just add too many more people to it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, I ask the clerk to take a roll. On 1275.
Okay, motion is ITL on Bill 1275. Representative Piemonte,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
I vote yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Nada?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Villa? Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Long? Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Telesky?
Yes.
Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van? Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
No.
Representative Rung?
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan?
Yes.
It passed 16 to 3.
Thank you. The next bill we're going to, yes, Representative Gallagher, you had a comment?
Remind me the threshold for consent calendar again. Are there going to be committee reports for that, or?
Yes, we have to write a committee report for everything that passes or fails to pass. That was, that's a little different than the direction we got last year.
Okay, thanks.
So who do we have on the hook for 1275 to write the blurb?
I believe that would be me.
Okay. Is there a minority report coming?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we'll have a minority report, and we'll decide in just before the end of the meeting who will be doing that report, unless somebody wants to jump up. Eric? Representative Gallagher?
Yeah, I'll do the minority report on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
the next bill we're going to exec is Bill 1387, and this is, would enable municipalities to adopt a property tax homestead exemption. Yes, Representative Lascelles.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move inexpedient to legislate on 1387.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
To me, the sponsor of the bill made, it was very enthusiastic, and I applaud the idea of improving home ownership, particularly for people who have trouble affording it. The problem with the bill, as I see it, is a homestead exemption it's very complicated and convoluted the way it's written, in my opinion. And secondly, anytime you give people an exemption, no matter how well-meaning the effort is, someone has to pay the bill for that. And I think that a homestead exemption would put a significant burden on people who did not get the homestead exemption.
Thank you. Those of you not engaging the committee right now, if you turn your microphones off, I appreciate it. Yes, Representative Klee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my colleague, Representative Lascelles. I went through, and I know this is an enabling bill, which means that it's not going to force anybody to do it. But I think adding one more type of exemption and so on is just going to muddy the waters. I literally went through all of the ones at the DRA, and we have so many of the exemptions. I think this is not a bad idea. I just think it would be better to do a whole housekeeping, and I know some people will tell me baby steps, but I look at all the exemptions, and this could actually add to some of the ones that Nashua had if, in fact, we did enable it. And I just think it just kind of muddies the waters, but I do see it as not a bad bill, just not on top of all the ones we have, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, Representative Tripp?
One of the qualifying factors in this bill for getting the exemption is that your household income, I believe, is below the median income in the municipality. And I ask how you would determine this, what the median household income was, and the response was that, well, you just do a Google search. And I think that's a innovative idea, but I don't believe that something as subjective as that should be be used to determine who is and who isn't qualified for this exemption. This is why I support ITL.
Thank you. Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support the ITL motion basically because of the reasons that have already been spoken, but I don't think it will have the result that the sponsor was looking for. As I read it, anybody can work for this exemption no matter what age they are. And we're having a problem, I understand it, with being welcoming to people of a younger age, but this makes it welcoming to people of an older age, and her goal was to get, affordable housing for people of a younger age. And I don't think that happens in this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Representative Ivy Van.
Now everyone calls me Ivy. I actually am going to oppose the ITL bill for two reasons. One of which is I do think that since this is an enabling legislation, any town that or city who chose to use it would have to look at all of their existing exemptions and see which ones they want to retain in addition to the homestead bill. The second reason is that this a homestead exemption privileges people who live and work in a community because it has to be your primary place. And I think those are exactly the people that we want to retain in the state of New Hampshire. And there's no question that our existing property tax system makes it very difficult for people to become homeowners. And while I do not believe that becoming a homeowner automatically makes you a better person, I think renters are people too. Renters also pay. And I think that it's time to take a hard look at the way we raise taxes in New Hampshire, and I think this is a great step forward, and particularly since it is enabling legislation. So I'm going to oppose the motion of ITL. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Representative Gallagher?
Hi, yeah, I agree with Representative Van. I support this bill and oppose the motion to ITL on the simple grounds that it makes our tax structure more progressively structured. I believe that people with less ability to pay should pay less in taxes, and people with more ability to pay should pay more in taxes. And it seems like this bill fits with that principle, so I'm going to support it and oppose the motion to ITL.
Thank you. Representative Mangiuri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I heard it said initially that the intent is very good, and I agree with that completely. And I agree with what I just heard from Representative Van and Representative Gallagher about the intent, the problem, way to fix the problem. I just don't see all of the solutions contained in this bill that would enable a community to be able to be confident that they were doing, they were crossing all the I's, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So I'm not opposed to the intent of what they were trying to do. I just don't think this bill gets there. So I just can't see how we could pass this one as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, Representative Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support the ITL for a couple reasons. One, and although I typically support enabling legislations, I think people in the community are the best judge of what's best for them. But this, a decision made by one community can have impact on neighboring communities that may have not adopted it. I'd also like to see more study as to the impact on business decisions of where a business would relocate. Something like this, I think, really needs to be studied at a greater depth and, perhaps looked at what would happen on a statewide level rather than municipality by municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. I too, like the idea. However, as I went through the bill and heard the presentation from the sponsor, I cannot overcome what I believe the deficiencies in the bill, and therefore, I'm going to support the ITL. Okay, Mr. Clerk, would you take a roll, please, on 1387?
Okay, the motion is ITL Bill 1387. Representative Piemonte.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp.
Yes.
Representative Guthrie. Representative LaSalle.
Yes.
Representative Notter.
Yes.
Representative Melvin.
Yes.
Representative Ayer. Representative Power.
Yes.
Representative Majori.
Yes.
Representative Long. Representative Gilman.
Yes.
Representative Tulsky.
Yes.
Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Van. Representative Klee.
Yes.
Representative Gallagher.
No.
Representative Rung.
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. What's the vote number?
16 to
16 to 3? 17 to 2?
no 16 to 1, 2, 3. 17 to 17. Okay,
17 to 2?
17 to 2.
Everybody get that?
have the right names on there for you. Let me see what we got here. Okay.
Would there be any objection to moving this to the consent calendar?
Yes, there would be. I object to it.
Okay, it only takes one. Your prerogative.
And Mr. Chair, I would just confer with Representative Gallagher and Representative Van about if either one of them would like to write the report for this. Great. Thank you, Representative Van.
Okay, I'd like to take, yes, Representative LaSalle.
I'd be happy to write the majority report.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a recess for 5 minutes. Stretch your legs and use the restrooms if you need to. Please be back here at, by that clock, 11 o'clock.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to, ought to pass amendment number 2022-0120H.
Mr. Chairman, I will second that motion.
Mr. Chair, I can give a summary of the changes. Those of you will remember the original bill that came before us earlier spoke of changing the length of term for county officers, specifically county attorney, county treasurer, county sheriff, county register of deeds, from a 2-year term to a 4-year term that would apply to Rockingham County. During discussion during the public hearing, there was the subject brought up about extending this to all counties. Like, I know Rockingham County is special, but is it so special that those county officers need 4-year terms when other counties don't? So this amendment extends that and changes language in relevant sections of the RSAs to reflect a 4-year term for those four offices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being from Hillsborough County, all I can think of is last term, we had the most incompetent county attorney, and we were so glad that it was only a 2-year term.
Mr. Chair, just going back to the testimony that we heard, I certainly appreciate that you may not always get the best person in that position, but not speaking specifically to that point, but the point that what their caseload and workload is going to be, and the fact that many of those cases, issues take more than 2 years to resolve. That was the point that captured me, is that they need more than 2 years in order to see to the end a certain issue. And that's the reason why I support this. But I do respect that you could have somebody in there who, you know, that's the problem with elections sometimes, is we don't always get, you know, exactly. So thank you. No, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at me.
I think also the testimony that struck me was the sheriff, who was a 2-year term, and he would be standing at the poll, and if he was elected, then he had to go right out and start campaigning for the next 2-year term. So to me, the 4-year term, it makes more sense.
Thank you. I had a comment also that I think what we're doing here is targeting mostly full-time employees of the county. And those who are part-time employees, like those of us sitting around the table here, we would stay in the every 2-year election, but we have a lot of time on our hands. The example is brought up about the sheriff. We want the sheriff out keeping the peace, arresting people that need to be arrested, putting people in jail that need to be put in jail, and so forth. Same thing with the county attorney. We would hope that county attorney would be spending their time looking at convictions and bringing actions against those people that need it, as opposed to, for example, for a sheriff to be standing on the corner with a couple of cardboard signs, waving to the traffic going by. I think that his time is better spent working as a sheriff as opposed to working as a candidate. So those are my comments. I think this general support for this across both aisles. And so I think we would make a strong statement if this passed unanimously. Yes, Representative Rung?
Yeah, I'd also like to say that since we had the public hearing, I've heard from other county attorneys who support this amendment. I also ran it by my county, Hillsborough County Commissioner, the chair, Ms. Pappas, who also supports it. And to get to Mrs. Notter's point about, or Representative Notter's point, even the current county attorney is under more supervision from the Attorney General's office. It seems like it's a structural issue in that office, and that having only 2 years and then having a change of leadership is very disruptive on the state level to be able to go in and provide support for counties. So thank you all, everyone in advance for your support.
Okay, are there any more comments? Yes.
Can you explain the difference between the language in, oh, sorry. Representative Rung, can you explain the language in the amendment and why it is different other than, I see the Rockingham County on the bill itself, but I'm just a little bit confused with the language in both cases. You know, for example, line 9, that's compared to, that's talking about the county attorney. And then elected for 4 years on line 17, it talks about all the other officers. Then we get down to the end of this, I believe this one, it talks about the, doesn't talk about all counties. Can you point out where it says all counties on here for me, just so I can catch it?
My understanding from talking to the drafting attorney is that there's separations in the amendment as they are in the actual bill because of where the occurrence of vacancies is mentioned in the RSA. So each RSA that addresses a vacancy, for instance, in RSA 7:33, it's specific to county attorneys and their length of term. So the amendment has to address not only that, but other occurrences in the RSAs where terms are mentioned. If you look down on the amendment on line 15, it says amend RSA 653. So that's one that addresses beginning, like specifying beginning at the 2020 state general election, it would begin.
In all counties?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So in each county, you would consider that all counties
Yes.
for those people? Okay, very good. Almost there.
Any further? Yes, Representative Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and kind of keying off of what Representative Piemonte said, the fact that it says an act relative to the length of terms for county officers, where the original one said Rockingham, that's the clarification of that it's all counties and not just Rockingham County? Do I have that correct?
Yes, it's all counties. When Representative Piemonte noted on line 21 or 22, the reference to Hillsborough County, by including all counties, including Hillsborough County, they have a specified way of filling vacancies that may not be consistent with other counties. Someday, maybe we can make that consistent, but for the purpose of this amendment, it's just extended to all counties.
Thank you very much.
Representative Tripp?
I was just going to make a comment that the original bill was for Rockingham only, and Representative Rung's amendment made it to
Okay, is there any further comment on this bill? This is Bill 13, House Bill 1397.
The amendment, I believe the motion I made is to pass the amendment.
You have the amendment? All right, so we have a motion to OTP the amendment, and it's been seconded. Mr. Clerk, would you take a roll?
Yes, sir. This amendment is number 2022-0120H. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lasalas?
Yes.
Representative Nada?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Aya? Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Long? Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Telesky?
Yes.
Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van?
Yes.
Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
Representative Rung?
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
19-0 passes.
Okay, without an objection, I will place this in the consent calendar.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr.
I'm moving too fast here. Okay, so the amendment passed 19-0. So now we need to look at the amendment, rather the bill as amended.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to make an ought to pass motion on House Bill 1397 as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, ask the clerk to take the roll, please.
Okay, HB 1397 is amended. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lasalas?
Yes.
Representative Nada?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Aya? Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Long? Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Telesky?
Yes.
Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van?
Yes.
Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
Representative Rung?
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
19-0. Motion passes.
Thank you. And without objection, I'll place this in the consent calendar.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Earlier, I had another amendment for a bill we'll exec at a later date. I would just request the members to keep a copy of that for our future executive session. It was an amendment on House Bill 1069.
Okay, I would ask that you give a copy to Secretary Heather Goley outside.
Yeah, I will.
So that she can keep that administratively.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're getting near the end. We have one more bill to exec. It's Bill HB 1277, and it's the bill about cybersecurity incidents. Is there a motion?
I move OTP on House Bill 1277.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The only, and I could be totally off base on this, where it says shall immediately report such incident. And I'm wondering if the word immediately, what does that mean? I mean, if it happens at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, it just seems kind of, You know, it's not precise enough for me, but I don't know, I don't have any substitution for it. But does anyone else have an issue with the word immediately?
Yes.
Thank-
Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no objection to the word immediately because you want to act on these things quickly. The state needs to know as soon as possible in order to have the least amount of damage done to whatever trickery is going on. So I have no problem with that word.
Representative,
IT is typically 24/7.
Representative Van?
Yeah, I was going to say that usually IT responses are in fact 24/7. And if it happens at 4:30 on Friday afternoon, I think that's a really good argument for immediately. So that you can start the damage control as fast as possible.
You go next. Representative Piemonte?
I had a conversation with the commissioner on this, and the way it's written now, some of these things that will happen in IT will, they'll delay. And one of the examples cited, you heard it on the news before it was actually reported to the department. Even with the 24/7, what this bill does, it enhances that, so there is no lag time in the reporting of it. So, that's all I have to say.
Yes, Representative Klee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with my colleagues before that. But at the same time, I do agree, I had a little bit of immediate kind of made me a little bit anxious about it. But I do agree with what everybody said here. I think we need to put something like this in place so that all parties are notified as quickly as possible so we can mitigate any worsening of that particular situation, because it can happen fast like a wildfire, so, thank you.
Any additional comments on the bill? Oh, yes, Representative Lascelles?
I thank my colleagues for giving me a warm and fuzzy feeling in my stomach.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I believe that the drafting attorneys would have considered that language that's somewhat ambiguous, and it passed their test. And I guess that's about as good a legal argument that we can rest on. Okay, are there any last comments on this bill? Seeing that we have a motion and a second, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Okay, I ought to pass on HB 1277. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie? Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Notter?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Ayer? Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Long? Yes. Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Telesky?
Yes.
Representative Perez?
Yes.
Representative Van?
Yes.
Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
Representative Rung?
Yes.
And Chairman Dolan?
Yes.
Motion passes 19-0.
Great, thank you. Without objection, I'll place this on the consent calendar as well. Seeing no objection. I'd like to thank, what's that? Yeah. I'd like to thank those substitutes that came in to help support the committee and for donating your time and allowing us to access your brain power to make these things better as we take them one at a time. So again, thank you very much. And I would say watch your calendars for the next round of bills that'll be coming out, and you'll stay current. Okay, with that concludes our session for the day. that? Oh, yeah?
You will, okay, you sure? Yep. All right.
Thanks, Janine.